Now, that takes money. You knew I'd say this, and I know that so many of you here have given money, and more importantly, you've given your time and your expertise, and you've stayed up late for those video meetings, and you've helped in every way you can. And I'm hoping that there are new people here who are new to this just because of the scope of this disaster, who will want to help. And I know that they'll contribute a little. But more important, I know that they'll wonder how they can become personally involved, how they can help out themselves so that they'll be able to say, yes, it happened, but I worked hard to stop it, and we did stop it. And they don't really know how they're going to do that, and I don't know either, but I know you'll figure it out. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Now there's a fellow with a bucket around here that we could fill up with bills. I hope you'll help us do that. Thank you, sir. We'll pass that around. I want to put in a plug for an interview that was done this morning by London Circle, a podcast that you might know about. They were very gracious. They spent an entire hour with me. It's a very grandfatherly sort of podcast, so it's safe to recommend to all your friends and elderly parents and young kids, and I hope you'll watch it. Thank you for being here. I'm humbled as always by your energy and your imagination. You're a wonderful bunch of people. Thank you.
From the river to the sea, from the sea to the river, brick by brick, Israeli apartheid, brick by brick, Israeli apartheid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Israelism, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the siege on Gaza. When I say end the siege on Gaza, you say end the siege now. Yeah. Some of you said it right. But like, you know, let's all be unified under one voice, you know what I mean? Yeah? End the siege on Gaza! End the siege on Gaza! See, it sounds a lot nicer because when the people united! The people united! The people united! All right. And next we have Salim Lubad, student activist from Oxford, who have been doing a beautiful encampment, by the way. Absolutely smashed it over there.
Thank you, and thank you for being here on this windy day. Well, thank you, and thank you for being here on this windy day. I'll be brief. I just want to share my personal experience with the many attempts over the years to break the siege on Gaza. I was born and raised in Gaza, and in 2010, I got a scholarship to study at the University of Oxford. When I received my eagerly anticipated admission letter in March of that year, leaving Gaza seemed to be an impossible dream due to the Israeli ironclad blockade on the Gaza Strip. However, 14 years ago, exactly on this day, on the 31st of May 2010, the Mavi Marmara ship made it to the shores of Gaza. And despite the massacre that Israel committed before the eyes of the world, as they do, when they killed 10 and wounded over 50 passengers, the Mavi Marmara and its brave crew managed to break the siege. This event laid the ground for a UN resolution that pressured both Egypt and Israel to open the borders, allowing me to leave from Gaza to Oxford. For this, I'm forever indebted to the bravery of the Mavi Marmara crew. We know there might be more effective ways to get aid into Gaza, and it will take mammoth relief efforts to revive life as we know it in the Gaza Strip. And we recognize that this is but a ship in the ocean. But we also understand that beyond the massacres and the ethnic cleansing, the indiscriminate killing, the destruction, Israel's long-standing policy aims to isolate the Palestinians from the rest of the world. This isolation enables Israel to make all the outrageous claims about Gaza and the Palestinians, simply because they think no one is allowed to see the truth for themselves. During and after this genocide, we must force the breaking of the siege in Gaza and establish permanent physical links with the city and its people. These links are not only to provide a lifeline, a much needed lifeline to the Palestinians there, but also to prevent Israel from portraying Gaza and its people in a way that fits their genocidal goals. We still hear false claims about Palestine before 1948, claiming that it was a slum land before the colonizers arrived to develop it. They are desperately trying to erase history, to rewrite history, thinking that no one knows the truth. And even now, they are trying to tell the story of Gaza, a story of Gaza that suits their narrative and their aims. Moments like this and breakthroughs such as those of the Mavi Marmara and what we hope for the Freedom Flotilla and Handala are more powerful than their face value. This is an act of resistance. Every mile this ship traveled towards the shores of Gaza, and every story we tell about our people in Gaza rips another page from the colonizers' trick book. Let's sail until Palestine is free. And so, to close, today, as we see our home turned into a slaughterhouse, with the world watching in silence and complicity, let's remember that we must bring the criminals to justice. Those who are killing our children, men, women, and those who are starving our families. If we fail to bring them to justice, this monster that is nurtured by the word silence and complicity and funded by our tax money will not stop in Gaza or Rafah or Jabalia. It will kill the children in the West Bank. They are killing the children in the West Bank. They will displace the Palestinians in Jerusalem. They will flatten Beirut. They will cut the water off from Jordan. If not brought to justice, this monster will not stop in Gaza or Rafah. It will come after every one of us, knocking on every door, bringing blood and carnage. Let's always remind ourselves that no matter what Israel does to force us into misery and despair, we will embrace each other until the dust settles. We will then pave a way for a brighter tomorrow and a more profound appreciation for life. We will look back on these times one day and celebrate the resilience of our people who are teaching us what it truly means to be alive. Let's always remember that we never ask God to spare us from misfortune. We only ask Him to spare us from despair. Thank you.
Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! I need you to I want you to scream. Let your echoes be vibrated across the water to the other side. Them man there in that yard over there, I want them to hear us, you know what I mean? Yeah? Free, free! Free, free! 1, 2, 3, 4! 5, 6, 7, 8! No justice! No justice! No justice! Right. What do we want? No. Because we asked for a ceasefire. Do you remember that? Do you remember when we asked for a ceasefire and then they gave us, what was it, 4 days? Yeah? And then they just went mad afterwards, innit? So when I say, what do we want? We want justice! What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
No!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
No!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
I need to bring up my phone one second. So, next, we have Dr. Yahya Basido from the ASAP, so Association of Students Activism for Palestine. Oh, is it actually? Okay, crazy. I keep reading the names wrong. Wow, crazy. Anyway, so the next up is actually a rehab health worker for Palestine. Thank you.
Hello, wonderful people!
Hello!
I was invited here today on behalf of Health Workers for Palestine. I'm sure you've seen us in the marches and the protests with the health block. And as an activist, to say a few words. Initially, I had prepared a few bullet points covering the key facts and statistics of healthcare workers that have suffered during this acute conflict. And I'm sure that every single one of you are aware of the gravity of what's happening, watching the horrors unfold in front of us in the news, in the social media, and have an interest in the truth. When I was preparing for today, even though it was very short notice, I reached the final bullet points and I realized how much the people of Gaza, the Palestinians of Gaza, the women of Gaza, the mothers, the grandmothers, the aunts, the sisters, the children, and the men of Gaza have been dehumanized to be referenced as bullet points, as numbers, as percentages in this 230 plus day genocide. It was at this point I realized I really have no standing to talk about this except with heartfelt empathy. And I wish with all my heart that their stories can be told by them one day in the near future, in a free Palestine. Free, free
Palestine!
free, free
Palestine!
free, free
Palestine!
free, free
Palestine!
free, free.
Palestine!
Like many of you, I wake up every day burdened by the weight of witnessing further atrocities against the people of Gaza. Just when I think this is the worst, it just keeps getting worse. We find ourselves in a time where governments fail to stand for humanity, where those in power disregard the cries of their very own people. Today I stand with Health Workers for Palestine and amongst you all, before you, to speak out against these injustices, to call out those perpetrators and to demand accountability. Richie Sunak's calls for censorship and restrictions on our voices, granting more power to the police to silence us, are nothing short of an assault on our democracy. We see our well-meaning comrades targeted for arrest, like what happened in Downing Street on Tuesday. Families with children sequestered and not allowed to leave until they've given their details. When was it a crime to voice our opinion? When was it a crime to stand for justice and amplify the voices of the oppressed? The government's contemptuous attitude towards the very people they are meant to represent is just appalling. And Labour, the historic counterparty, the supposed party of the people, is no better. pushing out members that don't toe the line. The loyal advocates like Faiza Shaheen, dumped for liking a tweet about freedom of speech and her own experiences of prejudice in the party. We stand with her and Diane Abbott and refuse to be silenced. In the words of Diane Abbott, we will not be intimidated, not be scared to express the truth for fear of being labelled anti-Semitic. And in solidarity with our Jewish friends to the right and to our Jewish friends Emily from Narmed, we refuse to accept genocide unfolding before our eyes. Richie Sunak, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. Keir Starmer, you can't hide.
We charge you with genocide.
Netanyahu, you can't hide.
We charge you with genocide.
UK government, you can't hide.
We charge you with genocide.
Richie Sunak, you can't hide.
We charge you with genocide.
UK government, you can't hide.
We charge you with genocide.
As a healthcare worker, we took an oath to protect and serve and help heal people. And as such, I wanted to share the stories of some of the heroes of the healthcare workers in Gaza. I want to remember them with their smiles. And although I did not know them personally, I, like many of you, have grown to love and look up to them as the pinnacle of what it means to be a doctor and a humanitarian. Defeating all odds, growing up and excelling in their studies whilst under siege of an occupied people and an apartheid state. Whilst the Israelis control every aspect and an apartheid state. Whilst the Israelis control every aspect of their life. From the money that goes into supporting the crippled healthcare system to controlling how much food and calories every person can consume to the restrictions on travel. They embody a profound commitment to healing and compassion, transcending beyond medical expertise to remain devoted to the needs of their community and patients. Take, for example, the mistreatment of Israeli troops during a February 2024 raid at Nasser Hospital in Gaza. Medical staff were blindfolded, detained, beaten, and humiliated. Dr. Ahmed Abu Sabh said he was held for 8 days, beaten and had his hands broken. Other medics reported being doused with cold water, forced to kneel for hours, and subjected to muzzled dogs. You can watch that testimony on the BBC. The Israeli Defense Forces continue to gaslight their way through mainstream media, but the truth is clear for all to see and documented through social media. Share it. Another, Dr. Adnan Bush, trained in King's College, London. I remember a colleague of Dr. Bush sharing how he would love exploring London on foot, and even found a treasured original art piece of the Dome of the Rock, painted back so many years ago. I want us to remember their humanness, their passion, their zest for life, their commitments to their families, and how Dr. Bush used to leave his phone on FaceTime so that his daughter could watch him when he was traveling. Dr. Bush passed in April in an IDF detention center, along with many of his hospital medical workers, nurses, staff, paramedics. They were all kidnapped from a Shifa hospital. And we now know some of the stories of torture coming out of these detention centers. I don't know if his body has been surrendered to his family. I want us to remember Dr. Meara, newly married, who passed in November. I want her to remember him with that constant happy smile on his face that lit every room he walked into. His professor, our friend, Nick Maynard, always mentions him with fondness as they laughed around their dinner table. Meara decided to go back to Gaza after he finished his degree in the UK. In Gaza, he started working with Médecins du Monde as an emergency doctor. Meara's best friend told us how his biggest fear was to be bummed and to be stuck under the rubble and not be buried. Sadly, this is exactly what happened to Dr. Meara. In fact, when his brothers went to recover his body, they themselves were bombed at the same site. He is one of thousands of Gazans under the rubble in Gaza with no burial. Even in death, the Israelis continue to humiliate and degrade Palestinians. But we're here to elevate and humanize these Palestinians. The mothers, the fathers, the children, the grandchildren, like you and me. Because in our thousands and in our millions, we are all Palestinian. I know I've gone on a little bit too much. And I should have cut this a little bit short, but I just have 2 more stories to share with you. And these stories are so important. Please repeat them, amplify them wherever you go and in as many circles as you can. History is told through stories. One of which is from our own healthcare worker and part of our group, Dr. Smith. He's an A&E doctor. And I asked him, what message would you like to share today? Dr. Smith is in Rafah, in Gaza, and has been since December. He used to work in UCL and King's College. He wanted me to share 2 things. One, the situation in Rafah. And 2, the message from the Palestinians that are around him. More than 812,000 people have been forcibly displaced from Rafah since the 6th of May. They're packed in ever smaller areas. Al-Mawasi, Dir al-Balah, some people returning to Khan Yunis. This city is completely destroyed by Israelis. They've pitched up tents amidst the rubble. Many trauma-wounded patients seen by our colleagues from the east of Rafah, Nusayrat and Jabaliyah have horrific injuries. Children with awful injuries are shocked into silence. There are huge infections, acute jaundice, likely hepatitis A, diarrhea and vomiting are pervasive. Limited aid access. Israel prioritizes entry of commercial trucks over humanitarian aid. This means food is reaching the market, but by the very people who are trying to hold it back. They have to buy the food from the very same people that are also trying to starve them. The second message was from the people around him, the Gazans around him. And they tell us to speak louder, push harder, and repeat our stories, and show up again and again and again. I want to share a chant with respect to that. Doctors, not a target. Physios, not a target. Pharmacists, surgeons, nurses, children, babies. Consider the story of Dr. Sayed Mararoof. This is the last story, I promise. A children's doctor, a beacon of resilience in the face of brutality. He was taken from his hospital, tortured, starved, and shackled for 45 days. Yet, upon his release, his first instinct was to return to help the countless children scarred by violence. This is the true testament of the Palestinian resistance and resilience. And for them, we tell them, to the people of Palestine, know that we hear you, we stand with you, and we stand in solidarity with you. Occupation is a crime from London to Palestine. There are hundreds and hundreds of stories like these, cataloguing horrors happening to medical staff across Gaza and the West Bank. Please don't forget West Bank. But let us